Yeah, man. I don't know what it is. The the just toughness of these people. It's like unflinching toughness to be able to look right into the face of disparity and don't even wince, don't even flinch. Just like that's they have a knowledge, man, of what it is to really get down and dig, man, when you want to live. That we don't. He lives more on the border of understanding what it means to physically be alive, dealing with hunger, dealing with, well, like when you deal with passion, man, if it's life or death, then, man, when he parties until he's senseless.
Yeah.
It's like it's extremes, man. The guy deals in extremes.
It doesn't tie up in a very neat ribbon. I mean, like you really can't.
No, no, I used to be able to make beautiful generalities before I came in the Peace Corps, and I and that whole ability has been completely wiped out. I just cannot do it any longer. Cannot make generalities.
I wonder, whether I'm going to be happy after leaving in 2 years. Well, I know that for myself, I'm going to be 6 times better for the experience. I can see in myself a lot of changes in just 1 year. I'm not the same person who arrived in Pesbury. And for myself, it's, just been tremendous that this whole thing has happened because I've had all this time to think about things that I never thought about before because I was always going to discotheques or there's something groovy on television that I wanted to see or, in the States you're really occupied all of your time completely. But here, you come home at 5 o'clock if you were out in the campo or something, and, there's no television. You get static on the radio, so you read a book. But what you do a lot of times is maybe write letters. And during this time when you're writing letters to different people, you're thinking to yourself, you're expressing what you yourself think at this moment, and you get to think that way about a lot of things that you never thought about before. I can't put this really very well in words, but it's just that I have a better understanding of who I am right now because I've thought about who I am, and I've thought about where I'm going. Before I was just floundering. I was going to be drafted, I was going to be this, I was going to be anything. I was going to join IBM and become a junior executive. God, I didn't want to be a junior executive at IBM. I didn't want to be drafted. And all of a sudden, this Peace Corps thing came through. Like, you couldn't talk to me for 2 days after I got this notice from the Peace Corps that that I'd been accepted. You know, it's sort of like the answer to everything. And, you know, it worked out so that, you know, now I know where I'm going. After a year, I know what I'm going to be doing.
Tiene dos compañeros que han trabajado en el comité, ¿verdad? Y no va a haber problema por eso. Lo importante es que usted, quien o tenga la voluntad de rendir a su cooperativa.
Well, being with Vakach, supposedly my time is occupied with the cooperative. But as it turns out, the co-op doesn't occupy much time at all. Well, it depends. It depends on the volunteer. If you want it to occupy a lot of time, it can. If you want to think up a lot of neat things to do, you can spend all your time with the co-op. But it seems to me as though you get to the point of diminishing returns with the co-op, where you put in so much time, but you don't really see the fruits of it anymore. So what happens is you try to find other things to do. You know, it's like all your life, you have school to go to. You have classes that's all laid out for you. You don't have to worry about anything except to meet your appointments. And then all of a sudden, you're in the compo. And they say, well, here you are, baby. You know, just do your thing. And, well, for the first 3 months, you have all you can do to speak Spanish. That's your whole preoccupation, is to learn how to speak Spanish. And then after you get that down, you start thinking about, my God, well, I've got to do something here now that I can get some kind of an understanding of Spanish. But you're just left all by yourself, and it's your own thing, whatever you do. And it's very hard to cope with after having this life where everything was set out for you, and you just followed your little schedule. And during the time you were in that little schedule, you say, my God, I hate this because I have to do this, I have to do that, and everything's so all laid out for me. And then when you're on your own, you discover, my God, this is really different, and it's very hard to cope with. It's sort of dramatic now that I can say that, God, you know, a year's gone by. And, you know, if I do the same thing that I'd done this next year, well, it's just not going to be worth it all. I think I've got a more realistic approach to things now than I did before. Like before, I was going to come down and just tell everybody all the grand benefits of the co-op, and then they were going to double their money. But, you know, you get here and you tell everybody all the grand benefits of the co-op, and a very small majority will listen to you, and they will. They'll double their money because it works. And, well, I'm not as optimistic because I can't seem to reach everybody. And you can't just say, well, I'm going to double 400 people's incomes. You can't. I can't. And you discover that this isn't really easy, you know, just because you're the gringo and come down here, you really don't know all about it.
I came down here with a whole pile of pamphlets on prefabrication and use of plastics in architecture and critical path method, the use of computers in design, and the whole thing. And I realized that all this knowledge was kind of useless down here because Latin America is not in the stage of development that the United States is. And that I'm coming to the conclusion now that I really can't make a big contribution in terms of process, in terms of coming up with new ways of building things, because they seem to have found the cheapest way of putting things together here. I'm settling now for like small changes, like trying to convince them that You know, like I can't change their systems of construction, but like the kinds of contributions I might be able to make now are suggesting using a wood interior partition instead of a brick one. And the reason they continue with brick is, from the way it appears to me now, is because it's just cultural inertia. I mean, they're just used to working with it. Another thing is the idea of exposed brick. We just take that for granted in the States. But the aesthetic down here doesn't want to accept that. The American way says that exposed brick is a lot more reasonable if you can do it nicely. It doesn't require maintenance like plastered over walled wood. They have to paint it or replaster it every few years. And the initial cost is certainly a lot more too. As much as I wanted to believe that we're all the same people and that once we understand each other there would be no differences, realizing that there really are some differences in our ways of thinking, in our ways of doing things, and realizing that I won't be able to impose the American way of doing things on them. I think that it was difficult at first accepting some of these things. I'm beginning to accept them now and play the game the way they play it, and appreciating the good things about it. Trusting that the ways that they've found to work things out have been proven over time, and they may seem stupid to us at first, but in many cases there are very good reasons for them. Now that I've accepted it, things aren't too difficult to adjust to. I think I came into Peace Corps with certain selfish motives. That I wanted to learn something about the architecture, the methods of construction, the economy, the way of life of Latin America. And these things, yes, I'm getting a lot out of it. But I also wanted to derive the personal benefits, you might call them spiritual benefits, that one might get from living alongside of people who are living on a subsistence level, kind of putting yourself to that test to see if you could do it, to live a simple life, eliminate the complications. Well, I have as many complications now as I've had in the States. Life isn't that much different. I won't be able to go back and tell war stories like a lot of the other fellas are. I won't be able to tell stories about buying a mule or about my 3-week trip out crossing the wilds of Honduras. Or about living on rice and beans for 2 years. We just don't live that way. Jack Vaughn was here a few months ago. He gave a really nice talk about, you know, all the great things that Peace Corps is doing and the values. And he didn't mention the word technical once. And like it was still the old image of Peace Corps, you know, out there catching malaria and coming in with, coming up with amoebas every couple weeks, and running around with the natives without shoes on, living in a mud hut. And like we aren't living that scene. And yeah, we feel funny about it.
it's the room that upsets me. It's this huge room. Like, it's just not made for a child. It's made for some huge giant that is 12 feet tall, but somehow shrinks to about 3 feet when he sits in one of these desks, because his room is just huge, and these little tiny kids are in there. And it just seems like for me, I just feel very lost in it. And like I can imagine what it's like for a kid who's half my size in this huge hall. And it just seems very scary to me. Here in Tegucigalpa, the schools were built long ago, and as a result, they have extremely high walls, high ceilings. And you get the feeling this is not a place for a child. Most of the furniture, what there is very, very old-fashioned. Like, a lot of the desks are the old nailed down on the floor kind, and they're made for 2 students. But many times there are 3, 4, and 5 students stuffed on the one chair. They're usually from 40 to 50 children in one classroom. It's hard to decorate a classroom that big. It's like you put one little picture up and it looks very strange, so you've got to go like all or nothing. I was a little depressed to find so much of the work that is in the room, if there is any kind of pictures, done by the teacher. I would have liked to see more work done by the kids in the room. Most of the things are very elaborately drawn, cutouts from American magazines of a beautiful home with a tiled bathroom and a dining room with rugs to show a dining room, and to show a kitchen. They have these beautiful ranges and things like that. The teacher has very carefully cut out, pasted, and put on a big board, and it just doesn't have anything to do with Honduras. And there's other examples. They'll have a picture in every classroom I've been in. They have a picture of the madre, the padre, and the kids. And they show blonde-haired, blue-eyed mother with a father, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, smoking a pipe, and kids very, very well-dressed. They all seem to have blonde hair and blue eyes, standing by a big, big automobile or outside their big country home. And this is, called familia. And they're all over every classroom, these beautiful pictures from life and look. But you'll never see them in Honduras, never. We try to improve the education system, and I think sometimes we're a little bit naive because we've just got to realize that the teaching methods here have been here a long time, long before us, and will be here a long time after us. And it's got to be worked out slowly. You just can't go in and change it overnight. I went out to a campo school. I remember it was in La Esperanza. And we hiked out 4 hours to get there. The teacher was giving a lesson on cows. And they had some kind of coloring book or something in front of them. And each child was like tracing on a piece of paper an outline of the cow that was in the book in front of them. And they were busy, and they looked pretty happy doing it. And outside, a real live cow stuck her head in the window, and started mooing and disturbing the class. And the teacher closed the window to shut him out, which left the room in sort of like almost total darkness. But the cow was disturbing the lesson. And then pretty soon the rest of the herd came outside the school, and there was a great amount of mooing and just a lot of noise. So she closed the door, which left the school in total darkness, the classroom, because there's no lights. And she did this later, she explained, because the cows were interrupting her lesson on cows. That cow was interrupting my lesson on cows, and I want to get through with my lesson. And when the lesson was over, they traced the little cow out of the book. She opened up the doors, and she proceeded to the next lesson. Oh God, there have been days and mornings, and I've woken up and I said, oh, what can I do today? Like what could I bring to the office that will show that I'm busy and productive? What can I type? Is there a letter I can type home? Is there a letter that I can write to a school? I've written more letters in the office than I've written in our home. And this doesn't seem to bother the people in the office too much because I always look busy. I mean, that's my own American hang-up, but I've got to look busy. A lot of times when they don't have work to do, they relax and they joke around with other members in the office, and there's no hang-up. But like with me, like if I'm not busy or if I don't appear to be busy, I get guilty, very, very guilty. Like, what can I do right now? I've got nothing to do. And I'll quickly pull out a piece of paper and retype what I've just typed with no errors. Or I'll check my speed and things like that. And it's a horrible thing. If it was like at a medium level, it wouldn't be too bad. Like if there was a little work to do each day, but it's not like that. It's like you're really busy a couple months, and then there's nothing, but nothing. And you gotta find what to do for a couple months. And I think it's harder for a technical or person in the city to face this than a Campo volunteer. Because like a Campo volunteer knows this is gonna happen, and like he sort of prepares for it, or if he doesn't prepare for it, it happens to him within the first couple months, he sees it. But you expect to be working in an office in the city, in the capital city, and not to have things to do seems like really crazy. You're working in the head office of primary education or any education office, and you have nothing to do. And it just drives you wild. Like especially me, because I get so guilty that I'm not doing something productive. I have to seek out other volunteers, and I sort of edge them on and let them tell me that they're not doing anything either. And that makes me feel a little bit better. You know, like at least we're all in the same boat.
It's not very big, but there's so much to it. Like the people in the city look hungrier than the people in the campo. I think life is harder in the city for most people. Just riding on the busitos and looking out the windows in the streets as you go by, and you see all these people on the streets that are kind of walking around or even working, or they're begging, and it seems like a much harsher reality. People come here from the campo because, I don't know, I guess maybe some sort of dream carries them here. A better life, maybe better education for their children. And then they get here and they don't have real marketable skills. And then it's just a real struggle. People just try to do what they can, and if they can't, then they have to beg. Their dreams are completely gone. Children here are, in many ways, not treated like people. The children get left on the streets. They don't get much to eat. They have to go out and hustle for things. They have a really hard life, and nobody listens to them. To our point of view, it's it's like children get abused.
Yet they love their children.
But yet they do love their children. In a way, maybe they treat them more like people. Because, I mean, more like adults than, say, Americans do. We kind of cuddle our kids and want to protect them. And here you don't do that. And I suppose in a way that's a more humane thing to do, because these kids are going to have a hard life. And if they don't learn how to survive from the time they're little kids, they'll never make it.